Hello citizens, today we are covering one of the longest running gameplay loops in Star Citizen. We are talking about mining. Mining is beloved by many players and is a surefire way to make millions in the verse, so let's get started. In Star Citizen there are three types of mining you can do. Hand mining, which is mainly for those interested in cave diving or criminals. Next is vehicle mining, which is done with the Grey Cat rock, and lastly, of course, is ship mining. There are currently only two mining ships in the game, the Misk Prospector and the Argo Mole. There are two much larger ships still in development, which is the RSI Arastra, coming in at the size of a Carrack and even features onboard refining capabilities, and the RSI Orion, the capital class mining ship of the game. For this video, we will focus on the Rock and the Prospector as these are the most accessible for anyone just getting started. Vehicle mining, I think, is one of the best entry-level professions in the verse. It's very cheap to get into and provides an awesome return on investment. This little buggy can be obtained in a variety of ways. Firstly is in-game purchase over at the New Deal located in Lorville. It'll run you a little over 100,000 AUEC, which is pretty cheap if you ask me. If you're just starting out and lack those funds, you can just rent the Rock for a little over 2,500 AUEC per day at any refinery station shown here. The last way you can grab one of these is of course the purchase with real money from the RSI store. I personally don't really recommend this for its price on the store as an option unless you just really want to have one. For this guide, I'll assume you're just starting out and will need to rent one. After you arrive to the station you've chosen, head to the main elevators and make your way to the refinery floor. Move across the catwalks to the mining support center. Go straight to the back left and you will find a rental terminal. Here you can rent the Rock. Don't worry, currently all refiners look exactly the same, so you won't get lost. Now that we have the Rock, we also need a ship large enough to transport it. Anything in the Cutlass Black size range or larger is capable of carrying a Rock. If you do happen to have the Nomad starter ship, it is the only starter ship in the game capable of carrying the Rock thanks to its pickup truck style design. If you lack something large enough, don't worry, you can rent a Cutlass Black from the very same terminal that you did the Rock. While in the mining support center, grab a Pembroke suit from the shop terminal across the way. I'll explain why later. This is truthfully all you really need to get started. Now it's time to put it all together. Make your way to your hangar and call up your Rock first. The controls to the Rock are very similar to your ship, and you'll even notice the familiar MFDs as well. Park your Rock completely off the ship platform and make sure there's good clearance here. If not, it might despawn when you call up your ship and you're going to have to repeat this step. Bring your ship up and load the Rock on board. Don't forget to equip your new suit, and let's head out. With the Rock, there are three minables we want to look for: Dolomite, Aphrite, and Hadanite. Hadanite is by far the most valuable from this group, so that's what I'm going to focus on. The largest concentration of this can be found over in Aberdeen around Hurston. The surface of this planet is extremely hot. This is where that new suit of yours comes in handy. Because the Rock is not a sealed vehicle, you are vulnerable to the temperatures of any planet's surface. Make your way to the planet's surface, and now we can learn our first mining skill: scanning. This feature is used in many areas of Star Citizen and has a special use here in mining. First, switch into scanning mode by pressing Shift Tab. Returning players might have noticed this looks different than what they may be used to. Currently, the piercing rating on the right side is set to 0. Press Tab to send out a ping in all directions. You should see different groups of bubbles appear with a distance indicator. Aim your crosshairs to one of these groups and raise your piercing ability to 100 by scrolling on your mouse wheel. Once at 100%, scan again. This time, you should see little map markers appear where the bubbles were. What we want to see here is these little markers in a very tight bundle, almost like they are all one but slightly spaced apart. This is a solid indicator that these are rocks you can mine with your vehicle. Another helpful indicator is the RS signature that appears just above your crosshairs. Hadanite always comes in multiples of 620. Each multiple represents another rock to mine. So, for example, 6200 RS signature would be 10 rocks to mine. If the rocks are tightly packed together, but the RS signature is not quite what we want, they may be Aphrite or Dolomite instead. You can still mine these, they're just not as good. Once you've identified a cluster, make your way over and get your Rock deployed. The Rock isn't the most maneuverable vehicle, but she gets the job done, just a little clunky. Press M to deploy your laser arm and switch into mining mode. This HUD is completely new from others you may have seen in the game, so let's take a look at what we have here. On the far left is the cargo capacity of your Rock. This will fill up in real time as you collect gems. Next is the distance meter. This meter has two sections. The first is the shaded hazard zone at the top. If you're inside this zone and the Rock has been overcharged at all, it could damage your vehicle. Below that is your green window, which represents your effective laser range. You can see 3 dashes as well. The bottommost one is your maximum laser range, next is the start of your optimal range, and lastly is the dash that separates the hazard zone from the optimal zone. Important note here is that the hazard zone will grow as a rock is overcharged. You need to be very careful with this, as typical damage to the rock usually involves it becoming immobile, meaning you're gonna have to walk the entire way back to your ship. Trust me, you'll only have to learn this lesson once. On the right side, we have a lot more going on here. The large colored bar represents our charge window. This differs from rock to rock and always has 3 sections: the white heat up zone, the green fracture zone, and the red overcharge zone. In Star Citizen, rocks heat up from bottom to top, but charge from right to left. Below this is a smaller bar. This is your laser power. This can be adjusted from 0 to 100 to stabilize your power output. Next to that, you can find your scan results, which displays critical information about the rock you are mining. While this is very helpful for ship mining, it's not very needed here. Lastly is the mining mode indicator in the top center. This will tell you if you are in fracture mode or extraction mode. Alright, with all the boring stuff out of the way, let's get mining. Turn on your laser by left clicking, then adjusting your laser power by scrolling up and down on the mouse wheel. Raise the rock charge up to the green optimal zone and keep it there until it fractures, balancing your power when needed. I'm going to do this first rock completely and not bore you guys with the rest. If you do overheat it, don't freak out. The overcharge will go away as you bring the charge out of the red area. Continue this process until all the rocks are fractured into gems. I know you may not see anything, but if you send out a ping like before, you will see all the little gem fragments on the ground. Now it's time to collect what we've done. To do this, simply press Alt and left click to swap modes. Release Alt and left click again to engage your laser like before. This part can be a bit fiddly for any number of reasons, which what isn't in Star Citizen. Drag the laser across the ground, jitter it from left to right, hold it in place for a little while. Look, do whatever you need to do to pick up your gems, alright? Once complete, you're free to do this as much as you'd like until it's time to sell. Head to any HDMS station on the surface. Currently the game is a bit buggy here and will not recognize your rock while it's inside your ship. So once you land, drive your rock out onto the ship pad and head to the building with the big red antenna labeled Storage. Inside you will find the commodity terminal. Simply select your rock and the resource you wish to sell and you're done. After 1 or 2 runs of this, you'll have the concept down pretty well and you can make 300 to 400k an hour pretty easily. Whoa there, citizen. I've interrupted this video at a completely random time to ask you to drop a like, and if you found this video minorly helpful, subscribe. Maybe the next video I make is exactly what you're looking for. Anyway, let's get back to it. Now we're off to ship mining. Just like the rock, the prospector can be purchased the exact same ways. From the rental terminal we were at before, it will run you around 72,000 AUEC per day. This is a bit pricey, but you can earn that back really quickly. You can purchase your very own prospector at the new deal just like the rock for 2.3 million AUEC. Of course, it wouldn't be Star Citizen if you couldn't buy something with real money, so this can be grabbed from the RSI store as well for $150 US. Unlike the rock, I don't believe this is a bad deal to purchase with real money if you don't want to take the time to grind it out in game. The prospector has a unique design in this bug-like appearance. Fitted with all size 1 components, it is by no means an all-star among ships. The inside is somewhat small, but they still managed to fit a bed to enable bed logging. Even though this lacks missile capability, it does have 2 weapon slots to enable it some defense, although you stand no real chance against a dedicated combat vessel. A unique feature of mining ships are these ore canisters on the side, but everyone just calls these saddlebags. The centerpiece of this ship is of course the mining laser, both figuratively and, well, actually it's mounted front and center. The size 1 arbor laser it comes stock with is a fine laser to get familiar with ship mining. If you had to rent your prospector, you will not be able to change this in the vehicle loadout manager. But with the introduction to 3.24, I have a workaround for this. Alternatively, if you own a prospector in whatever way you've obtained it, you can just change out the laser in the loadout manager like normal. To do this with the rented prospector, you'll need to call up your new laser on the cargo freight elevator to access it. Hop inside your prospector and press the down arrow key to unlock ship ports. Now all you have to do is pull the old laser off, place your new laser on, and you will need to do this with modules as well, but I'll get into that later. There are currently 6 different mining lasers in the game, each one in size 1 and size 2 variations. The prospector can only fit the size 1. While each of these has their place in a build, I prefer the Hofstede and the Helix. Initially starting off, I would strongly recommend the Hofstede. This laser provides an excellent array of buffs to your laser that enables mining to be just a bit easier. This is definitely the one you want to start with before you work up to the others. The Helix is the strongest laser in both size 1 and size 2 categories. All this power does come at a price, with some debuffs that can make a very difficult fracturing process. You're going to need precision and control to finesse this laser. But once you can, it is the one I recommend for any veterans of the craft and the one that I use. You may have noticed module slots in your laser descriptions. These are attachments that change the traits of your laser, allowing you to create builds and customize your mining style. For the purposes of this guide, I will not dive into that in too much detail as it's kind of a complicated topic. For the Hofstede, I would just recommend a Riker C3, and for the Helix, I would use a Torrent 3 and a Focus 3 when you first start out. Once you've gotten pretty comfortable with the Helix, I would then change out your Torrent 3 for a Riker C3. I will dive into these a bit more in a later video. As for the ship components, of course, upgrading them to grade A will make your ship better, but the mining capabilities of your ship are not improved by this performance increase. Now we're off on our first expedition. But what does this ship even mine? Well, it's not Hadanite, or any of the other rock or hand minables in the game. There are many materials in the game for a ship to mine, and the king of them all is Quantanium. Coming in at over 25,000 per SCU, it is by far the most valuable resource you can find, and also very scarce as a result. Next up is what I call the big three: gold, Bexelite, and Terranite. These sit around 7,500 per SCU and are more frequent than Quantanium. Next are your mid-tier ores. These are all fine and range in value from 2,000 to 3,500, providing a pretty decent return on investment. Lastly are your common ores. These are each worth only a couple hundred apiece, depending on the planet, moon, or asteroid belt you happen to be mining in, will depend on how much of these you find. For this guide, we will be heading out to the surface of Ariel to see what we can find. Scan in the same way you did before, except this time we want mini arrows slightly spaced apart. Any RS signature above 9,000 is preferable, as higher numbers means more rocks. Once you arrive, switch into mining mode just like before by pressing M. A helpful thing I've found is to ping as you pull up, as it will highlight all the rocks blue that you can mine, making them easier to see. During your initial scan, if it is outlined in yellow, that means it needs to be fractured, and if it's outlined in purple, that means it can be extracted. This AI should look pretty familiar from what we went over with the rock earlier, so I'm not going to cover any of that again, as it all works exactly the same. There are a few things here that I do want to touch on. Firstly, on the right side, which displays our rock data. This information provides key details into the mass, resistance, instability, and composition. The mass is how large the rock is in terms of density. More mass means more laser power is needed to break it. Resistance is its ability to, resist the power input of your laser. The instability affects how much the rock's charge will fluctuate, making laser power management more of a challenge. The stronger your laser, the hardest this becomes. The lower the resistance and instability are, the easier a rock will be to mine. Instability is much easier to overcome if you have a skilled hand, but the only way to beat high resistance is to overpower it. Rock composition is simple, as it tells you what exactly is in a rock and how much of it. The SCU contents is the total SCU you could extract if you grabbed it all. The percentages represent portions of that total. You will also see a difficulty rating here too. I personally don't pay much mind to that, as I crack impossible rocks all the time. The left side of the screen displays the modules equipped to your current laser and the effects they are applying, if any. If you're using the modules I suggested earlier, they are all passive mods, so they do not require anything special, unlike active mods. The bottom left is your laser stats, and if you have any modules affecting these, they will be displayed as well. With all that out of the way, we can move on to some mining. Ship mining is largely the same as rock mining at this point. Fracture the rock until the fragments are small enough to extract. A quick way to tell is if a rock does not have a charge bar appear at all, then it can be extracted. Here's where you need to decide if you want to be what I call a volume miner or a value miner. A volume miner is not going to care too much about what the rocks contain. You're simply going to find the first rock you do, fracture it, and then extract it all. A value miner will still find high value rocks, but will be picky about the subfragments. They might skip over a 100% titanium piece to save space for something more lucrative, while a volume miner will grab it all to save time. Either is valid, but I consider myself more of a value miner. Once you've completely filled up your saddlebags, or you're just done, it's time to refine. Head to one of the refineries from earlier, and instead of the support center, go up the stairs to refinement processing. Here you will find two sets of terminals. ore selling, and ore refining. Ore selling is on the left and allows you to sell all of your ore directly to the station. This convenience does come at a price, as you will only receive about half of what it will be worth refined, but this allows you to get your money immediately and ends the gameplay loop. I would start off this way initially to build up some cushion funds before you start refining, as it does cost a little bit of money. This is much faster than the alternative, which would be ore refining. Refining involves the processing of your ore and then packaging it into appropriate, standardized SCU containers. This has several ways to do it and has 3 factors to consider: yield, speed, and cost. There is no method that provides the best of all 3, so you will need to decide which 2 fit what you want the best. Every method is going to cause you to lose a little bit of material, which is the yield, in the refinement process, and each is going to cost you a little bit of money. You can stack as many orders as you'd like. Keep in mind that every patch will wipe all of your refinery orders, as these are not considered persistent entities. And no, you cannot split up one prospector order into numerous ones. Once your orders are complete, you're ready to sell. Pick up your order from the terminal and choose the ship you wish it to be loaded onto. I'm sure this is an oversight, but for right now, you're not required to physically load like you do with cargo. Once you accept the transaction, your cargo will be immediately available on your ship. If you don't have a ship to load it onto, the Cutlass Black is a solid option, but will require several trips, as it will only hold one prospector order worth of ore at a time. I think the Constellation Taurus or the Caterpillar are much better options and can be rented at some of the rental terminals in Lorville or Orison. They're both pretty pricey, so my advice would be to do all your mining on one day and then do all of your delivery when it's complete. 3 or 4 hours of mining will yield quite a few orders, so you should be able to fill up one of those ships almost full and then go deliver them. Go retrieve your ship and head to your preferred city for business. Personally, I like Hurston, but any major city buys all of these goods. While you didn't have to load them, you will have to unload them to sell, so keep that in mind. This is why I recommend those 2 ships from before, as they both have built-in tractor beams mounted onto the ship for unloading. Place the containers onto the cargo grid of the freight elevator and lower it down to store them locally. Upon arrival, you will want to head down to the TDD, Trade and Development Division. If you go to the admin office, you will not be able to sell there. With the changes that came to cargo, this terminal has had a little bit of an overhaul. On the top left, select Lorville for your goods to appear. You can select the individual container sizes, or just press max and then you can sell them all at once. And boom, now you're a certified miner. With all the changes that have happened so far and that are soon to come with base building and crafting, not to mention the money you can make from this, mining is easily one of the best gameplay loops in my opinion for any player starting out. Thank you guys so much for watching, best of luck in your adventures out in the verse, and I'll see you all in the next one.